Welcome to Magnificat TV news program, dedicated to providing news of the Church. Today is Wednesday, March 15, 2023, and these are our news. Pope Francis has completed 10 years at the head of the Church. He was elected after the surprise resignation of his predecessor, Benedict XVI. The German Synod has ended, approving norms ranging from the blessing of homosexual couples to acceptance of gender ideology. The Pope has changed the composition of the Council of Cardinals that advises him of the governments of the Church. German Cardinal Marx has been excluded from it. Nicaragua's communist President Ortega has further increased repression against the Church. He has seized 2 Catholic universities. Francis has been at the head of the Church for 10 years. His election followed the surprise resignation of his predecessor, Benedict XVI.
Last Monday, the 13th, marked 10 years since the election of the 10th Cardinal and Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, as Bishop of Rome and Vicar of Christ. He took on the man of Francis in honor of Saint Francis of Assisi, with whom he said he wanted to identify. The Pope wanted to celebrate this anniversary almost in privacy. At 8 a.m., he celebrated Holy Mass in the chapel of the Casa Santa Marta, where he lives, accompanied by the cardinal who live in Rome and his closest collaborators. Francis' 10 years of governing the Church have been marked by efforts to structurally reform the Vatican Curia, to correct economic abuses in its administration, and to implement for the Church a path based on synodality. They have also been marked by numerous conflicts provoked by some of his decisions, such as the limitations on the celebration of the traditional Mass, or by decisions taken by the episcopates such as of the Germany. During this time, he has made numerous international trips, some of them high risk, such as the one he made to South Sudan. He has also tried to intervene as a mediator without success in major international conflicts such as the war in Syria or the current war in Ukraine. Although at 86 years of age, there is no shortage of rumors about his resignation. He has reiterated that he will not imitate his predecessor unless his health worsens seriously and makes it impossible for him to continue governing a church that already has almost 1.4 billion faithful.
Petitions have been fulfilled, and in its final assembly, norms contrary to the Church doctrine have been approved.
At least 4 rules were approved by the German Synod. The first was to call for the ordination of married men to be permitted. The second was that lay people should be allowed to preach at Mass, baptize and celebrate marriages. Third, that non-sacramental unions, such as those of homosexual or heterosexual couples not married in the Church, be blessed. The fourth was to recognize gender ideology, and, as a consequence, to admit transsexuals to the priesthood. To avoid a blocking minority of bishops, if a third of them voted against, the conclusions were not to be adopted. It was decided to abolish secret ballots. Fear of the harassment that would befall those who objected led many bishops to abstain and only a few to vote against the debated resolutions. On the first point, priestly celibacy, the German Synod did not approve the ordination of married men to the priesthood, but asked the Vatican to abolish this rule, which has existed in the Latin Church for more than 1,000 years, although it is not present in the Greek Rite Catholic Church. The German synodal way also approved allowing lay preaching at Mass, the celebration of baptisms by lay people, and the celebration of the sacraments of marriage by a lay person. This was preceded by a debate on the possibility of lay people hearing confessions and giving union to the sick, which in the end was not approved. The third point was the approval of blessing all kinds of couples not married in the church, both homosexual and heterosexual, with only 9 bishops voting against, something expressly forbidden 2 years ago by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith was approved. Finally, gender ideology was accepted, whereby male or female sex is not related to biology. There was a call for the new sex of persons who have legally changed their sex to be recorded in baptismal records. Consequently, since women can be considered as men, it was requested that transsexuals be admitted to the priesthood and also to the novitiates of religious congregations, according to the sex they have chosen to have. Access to ecclesiastical ordination offices and pastoral vocations should not be excluded across the board, even for intersex and transgender baptized and confirmed persons, but should be examined on a case-by-case basis, the approved documents states. The Synod recommends all ecclesia communities to allow intersex and transgender persons equal access to or to remain in an institute of consecrated life or a society of apostolic life, while abolishing gender determination by external sexual characteristics for candidates to the priesthood.
Cardinal Marx of Munich has been excluded by Pope's decision from the new Council of Cardinals that advises him on the governments of the Church.
Cardinal Juan José Omella, Archbishop of Barcelona and President of the Spanish Episcopal Conference, has been appointed by Pope Francis as a member of the C9, the Council of Cardinals who advise the Pontiff on the government of the Church. To that same council, the Pope has also appointed Luxembourg Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich, a Jesuit, known to be in favor of the blessing of homosexual couples. Hollerich is the general account of the Synod of Bishops and chairs of the Council of European Bishops' Conferences. Another new cardinal on the council is Fernando Verges of Spain, currently president of the Vatican City Governorate and a member of the Legionaries of Christ. Also joining the council for the first time are Cardinals Lacroix, Archbishop of Quebec, and Da Rocha, Archbishop of San Salvador in Brazil. Cardinals Parolin, Secretary of State, and Bongo, Archbishop of Kinshasa, Gracias, Archbishop of Mumbai, and O'Malley, Archbishop of Boston, remain on the council. Cardinals Maradiaga, now retired, and Marx, still Archbishop of Munich, are no longer there.
Nicaragua's communist President Ortega continues to increase his repression of the Church. He has banned processions and seized 2 universities.
Nicaraguan government has annulled the legal personality and confiscated the assets of Caritas and 2 Catholic universities, closing them. A ministerial agreement published in the 7th Mass edition of the Nicaraguan government's official newspaper, La Gaceta, states that the legal personality of the Universidad Juan Pablo II and the Universidad Cristiana Autónoma de Nicaragua has been cancelled for non-compliance with the laws that regulate them. Separate ministerial agreements published in the 7th March edition of La Gaceta states that both Caritas in the Diocese of Jicotega and the larger Caritas Nicaragua agreed to voluntary dissolution and liquidation by unanimous decision of its members. The recent measures against the 2 universities and Caritas follow the imprisonment of Bishop Rolando Alvarez of Matagalpa, who, after refusing exile, was sentenced on 10 February by the government to 26 years in prison, stripped of his citizenship, and ordered to pay a heavy fine on charges of treason, attacking national integrity. Ortega has also banned the holding of Stations of the Cross and Holy Week processions in the streets. All of these will have to take place inside churches for fear that they will become protest demonstrations against dictatorship.
Our editorial this week is devoted to commenting on the conclusion of the German Synod, which, among other things, calls for the ordination of transsexuals. Historians generally agree that the moment Luther's schism began was the day he nailed the 95 Theses against indulgence to the door of All Saints Church in Wittenberg. The year was 1517. Luther still took 4 years to be excommunicated. For years they were very profitable for him and for his heresy, which was able to spread especially in the northern Europe. That is also a common opinion of historians. Well, I am convinced that what happened this weekend is the beginning of a new schism, comparable to that symbolic act of nailing the thesis against indulgence on the door of the Church of All Saints. What has happened this weekend has been the conclusion of the German Synod. They have not avoided the clash. They have not tried to bring positions closer to what the Vatican had been saying and what it is the doctrine of the Catholic Church. They have openly gone to the clash, and they have also done it using their beloved dictatorial methods. For example, prohibiting anonymous voting, that the votes were nominal, that everyone knew what the other one voted. So they have achieved that on an important number of bishops obtained, and that only a small group of bishops voted against what was being approved. Why did these bishops abstain? Out of fear. They have not been brave. They have been very cowardly, but they harsh men to which are subjected to those who do not agree with those who officially claim to be tolerant, has made them not to defend their principles, and thus these conclusions, which are clearly schismatic, have been approved. For example, first, to ask that the obligatory celibacy of priests be abolished. Second, that the laity, especially lay women, be allowed to preach homilies at Mass, celebrate baptisms and weddings. Third, that all types of couples can be blessed regardless of whether or not they are married in church. Couples composed of homosexuals, couples composed of people who are not even civilly married, or couples composed of people who are civilly married but not sacramentally married. Blessing of couples of all types, and in fact it has already been approved. It has been decided that a type of liturgy especially adapted to these cases has to be created. Fourth, completed acceptance of gender ideology. Gender is no longer sex. It's no longer a question linked to biology, but a question linked to the one's own will, to one's own feelings, and it is also changeable. Today you can feel like a man, tomorrow a woman, and the day after tomorrow a man again, or the other way around. And as a consequence, people who are physically women but who declare themselves men because they feel they are men, that is to say, transsexual people, are to be accepted in the seminarians and reach the priesthood. Transsexual can be ordained priests even if they are physically women, and naturally, once they are ordained priests, or more precisely, once they are ordained priestess, they can say again without any problem that they have changed sex again, because they have stopped feeling like men and started to feel like women again. One of the few German bishops who have decided to remain Catholic in response to this. Recall the Anglican Church has just gone into a schism over the approval of blessing to homosexual couples, and that what was approved in the German Synod is much more than all of that, and that the Anglican Church is the perfect model, the finished model of that misnamed tolerance, in which you can believe and do whatever you want as long as you do not interfere with what others believe and do. Well, not even the Anglican tolerance has avoided the rapture within the ecclesial communion. Would they have decided to approve in England the blessing of homosexual couples? This German bishop has said, quote, "This is much worse than that. They have gone into schism. What is going to happen to us?" End quote. That is the question right now. It is no longer a question of some Vatican cardinals or of the highest level, such as Parolin and Ladaria, for example, intervening because they have already done so and they have been ignored. Now it is time for the Petrine ministry to intervene. That is to say, it is the historical moment in which the Holy Father, in function of the Petrine ministry, that he and only he has, and no one of his cardinals have, even though they speak in his name and by his mandate, it is time for the Holy Father, making use of his Petrine ministry, which has the duty to confirm his brothers in the faith, to maintain the faith that the pontifics have received one after another since Peter's, to intervene. This is essential, and that there be clear norms and absolutely prohibitions so that it is manifest that it is clear, without any doubts, that any bishop who excuses that which has been approved by the German Synod must be immediately dismissed. The 4 years that were lost with Luther cannot be lost now. We are in times where communication are infinitely faster than in Luther's time. If we don't act quickly and decisively, I repeat, by one who has the Petrine ministry, many will consider that this initiative is a tacit permission to do what has been approved by the German Synod. The same thing will immediately begin to be applied in Belgium, in Switzerland, in the United States, and even in some places in Latin America, I have no doubts. And what happened with the Lutheran Germans' heresy is little compared to what can happen right now. I believe that we must continue to pray a lot, but it seems to me that at this moment prayer is no longer enough. Now it's time to act, and act on the part of him who has the responsibility to do so. What will the cardinals and bishops do the day that there will be transsexual priests celebrating Mass? And what will be the faithful do? Is everyone going to remain silent like the dead? Have we reached this point of passivity? We must pray, and we must act. Until next week, God willing. We will continue to keep you informed of what is happening in the church, but during the meantime, you can visit our website, www.magnificat.tv. See you next week, God willing.